Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a lot to talk about today, so I'm going to include chapters on this video. That way you can skip forward any section that maybe you don't want to listen to. This is only going to end in one way. It is going to end in the collapse of the United States of America, or it's going to end in the collapse of the big R, or the big C. Right? So China and Russia are going to collapse, or the United States of America is going to collapse. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go over some words of wisdom here from a historian, someone that actually studies history. Imagine that. Imagine if our representatives actually studied history and they could see with their eyes what's happening now. You know, I'm going to predict something, and I guess I'm going to put it on record right now. But I believe that our politicians, that our representatives, not all of them of course, but most of them, are so uneducated in the history of the world, not only the history of this nation, but the history of the world, that when the collapse finally actually happens, that many of them are going to be in shock, because it's going to be so big that many of them aren't even going to believe that it happened. And many of them are going to hide. They're going to run away. They're going to get the news that the United States of America, as we now know it, is over. And their power will therefore be over. That they are going to be leaving their seats from Congress and going to the hall and puking, because they are going to be so afraid of what comes next. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when the United States of America collapses, it's going to be the politicians that are going to be the most scared. However, you have to be prepared for when that happens. I'm not saying this hoping that it will happen, but all you have to do is take a look around and see for yourselves that in the United States, we no longer manufacture those things that we need to be self-reliant. There's no possible way to be self-sufficient, meaning that you can provide for yourself every single thing that you need, all the way down to your comforts like coffee, for example. It's why I've often said that why can't we just produce in America the things that we need, and whatever there's left over we can use to trade for those things that we want that we can't produce. For example, and I'm going to use something very simple that many people love, including myself, coffee. We can't really produce the amount of coffee here in the United States of America that we need in order to supply the need. So what do? We import it from other countries like Brazil, like Colombia, etc. Right? So if we produce, let's say for example, an abundance of corn, and we have more than what we need, and country B doesn't, but they have more coffee than what they need, then we can trade. What's wrong with that? You know what's wrong with that? That would actually create peace. When neighbors are actually trading in peace instead of trying to change governments, instead of trying to throw over governments so that you can have it all. Right? I've often told people that whenever they're trading in the market, now I'm not a professional trader, I've done a limited amount of trading in my lifetime. However, there's one rule that I've often used. Number one, well, a rule with two parts. Number one, always have an exit strategy. Always tell yourself before you even go into the trade, how much am I going to want to make on this? And when am I going to get out? And then once that number comes, then you get out and make your profit. Don't be a pig. So those are the two rules. Have an exit strategy and don't be a pig. Don't be too greedy. But there are some people that want it all, ladies and gentlemen. They want to dominate the world. And because of that, we are already in World War III. It's just not a ground war here in the United States. We've been very lucky in the United States to never have had to have a ground war here in the United States. And I think that we are going to avoid that. I don't think we're going to have a ground war in the United States. However, the war is going to be within ourselves. The war is going to be the collapse of everything we know it, the way we know it. And what's going to happen is that those people that refuse to prepare, those people that were not in the know, they are going to pay the price a lot heavier than anyone else. This French historian right here, who predicted the collapse of the Soviet Union over a decade before it actually happened, is now predicting the collapse of either the United States or Russia. It's going to be one or the other, ladies and gentlemen. And as I stated previously, what do we really make here in the United States? And if we decided today to make everything here in the United States, how long would it take before we could actually do that? I say that it would take longer than what we need. And in my opinion, Russia right now, with the support of China, they pretty much have everything that they need. They're pretty much self-contained. They get financial backing from China when they need it. They get a lot of their things from China. They can sustain themselves. They're still drilling their own energy. Heck, they're burning off about $10 million worth of natural gas every day because they have nowhere to pump it to. So ladies and gentlemen, you need to prepare for the inevitable. And the inevitable is that our lives will change. And they're not going to change for the better. However, if you're prepared, if you take the time to prepare now, you'll be able to weather that storm. Because that storm will be coming sooner than later, in my opinion. And Mr. Todd says that it is evident that this conflict, which was initially limited to territorial war, has evolved into a global economic confrontation between the entire West on one side and Russia and China on the other side. And it has become a world war. The only thing that I have to disagree with that is that it's not just Russia and China, but the BRICS nations as well. They are going to jump ship, and that ship being the Federal Reserve note, as soon as they possibly can, ladies and gentlemen. They are already lined up. There's so many nations lined up to get into the BRICS Plus nations that when our Congress people finally realize that the Federal Reserve note no longer has world hegemony, they are going to puke where they sit. And he continues to say that this president needs to do something in order to rescue a fragile America. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, and I'm not making this political, but it is the truth, this president and this administration, they have weakened America in so many ways that I couldn't even tell you. I'd actually have to put it down on paper to go from 1 to 100. The Russian economy's resistance to sanctions is pushing the American imperial system toward a precipice, with Russia still able to rely on China for monetary backing. Now, China still owns close to $1 trillion worth of government bonds, of U.S. bonds. They can use that whenever they want. America cannot withdraw from this conflict. They cannot let go because it has no exit strategy and the stakes are too high. This is why we are now in an endless war, in a confrontation whose outcome must be the collapse of one or the other. And again, I say, this is not coming from some layman like me. This is coming from someone that does this for a living, that studies history for a living. And the farther back that you go in time, ladies and gentlemen, the farther forward that you can see. Why is that? Because humans are very predictable. We love to forget history. We love to make the same mistakes generations after generations. And what is the result, ladies and gentlemen, of a bloated government? This right here. Ugliness awaits many boomers nearing retirement. Ladies and gentlemen, our system is so overdrawn. There's so much that is needed from our system that is nearing the point of collapse. There's not much more that you can squeeze out of the American people. There isn't. What's going to happen when there is no more that the government can squeeze out of the American people? Two things. One of two things. It will become more tyrant in order to, instead of squeeze, just plain out take. Or the system will cease to exist in the manner that we know it today. Ugliness awaits most boomers nearing retirement. Not only have they been lied to, which I agree with 100%, but they also have to deal with rigged markets, corruption, and incompetent advisors. You know, let me go ahead and break in real quick. You need to understand that you have to preserve your wealth. You have to understand what inflation is. The CPI came out this morning, I think it is, and I think it came out higher than what they expected it to be. And I don't really bother going over the CPI too much because it's just a CPI. Do you really think that inflation's at 6.5%? Have you been shopping lately? Is it really at 6.5%? I mean, we caught the government, not me, I reported on it, but the government just got caught making up the employment numbers whereas they said that there was 517 new jobs added, there was really about 2.5 million jobs taken away from the labor market. So how can we even believe what it is that they tell us? And that's the problem, that people do not educate themselves in the thing that is the most important thing to them. Oh, family? No, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, family is important, but how do you take care of your family? You take care of your family by working and earning money so that you can take that money and give them the standard of living that you're used to living. That is how you support your family. So in working and in saving, you're doing these things for your family. So yes, your family is the most important thing, and that is why people sacrifice. But all of the money that people have put away in savings and 401ks and the stock market and everything has never kept up with inflation. Inflation is a tool that is used to steal from you your labor and your time. And that is why so many boomers, so many of the elderly today, they're finding themselves broke. They're finding themselves with no hope. They're finding themselves with living only on the Social Security that they receive that will never keep up with inflation. And now we have a few more generations on top of the boomers that are falling for the same thing that they did. You need to protect yourselves. You know, I wasn't going to talk about this, but if you have a 401k, if you have an IRA, educate yourself. All right. Take a look at the links that I have in the bottom. I've got two of them. I've got one for ITM Trading, and that's run by Miss Lynette Zhang. And I have one from Genesis Gold Group. And they specialize in actually taking people with big net worths that have 5,000 to 50,000 to 100,000, whatever, and converting their fiat currency into real money that you can hold in your hands. So ladies and gentlemen, take advantage of those services. They're free. They're not going to charge you. I was just talking to Justin from ITM Trading here not too long ago. And he told me that they've been working with one customer on like the 13th or 14th phone calls. And their phone calls don't last, 2 minutes. They don't get you on there and say, oh, you're not going to get anything? Okay, then we got to go. No, they last 30, 45 minutes. They educate you. And then you can make whatever decision you want. There's no pressure selling. You call them, you make an appointment, you have a discussion, and you educate yourself. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that a lot of people don't even have a 401k or IRA or whatever it is that they have nowadays. But a lot of people do. And I know that for a fact because a lot of you have used their services. What I would say is, personally, if I was going to use one of those two services, I would make sure that before I did that, I had a base of precious metals, that I had like so many 100 ounces of silver or 100 ounces of silver. My goal is to be able to have 2 ounces of silver per day for when the big crash comes. So I'm hoping to be able to make my stack enough to where I have 365 times 2, 730. Ounces of silver, because I think it's going to take at least 2 ounces of silver per day for you to continue to live your standard of living that you're living now. But that's just me, and I'm not a financial advisor, by the way. I have to say that because I'm on the internet. It's just what it is. But that's what I would do. I would wait till I have my base, and then if I have like a 401k, if I have an IRA that I want to switch over into precious metals and be able to hold it in your hands and not have all of those layers between you and your money. Think about your 401k that you have. How many layers are between you and that money in that 401k account? Right? First, you have to be able to get it out, number one, depending on how old you are, depending if you quit your job, or depending if you're going to get some out to buy a house or whatever. And then they have to go ahead and approve it. They have to approve to give you your money. Right? And you have to ask for it. And then it has to be sent to a bank. And then you have to go to the bank, and you probably can't get all the money out of there in one shot. You have to take it out in increments. Those are layers that are between you and your wealth and the time that you spent in your life earning that money. If you have a lot of money in a 401k or an IRA and you want to convert it into real physical silver that you can hold in your hands instead of having someone else hold it for you, go check it out, ladies and gentlemen. The time for you to protect yourself is now. It's now. And let me say this before I continue. To use those services, it's not for everyone. It really isn't. It's for people that have a lot of money, like in 401ks, RIAs, or just have a lot of money altogether. Right? And I know that a lot of people in this community do. That's why I put this message out, because it's there to help you protect your wealth. The government is not going to do it for you. Look at what they've done to our country. for the last so many decades. Look at what they've done to our country, ladies and gentlemen. They're destroying our country from within. Abraham Lincoln was right. They are destroying our country from within. And what can you do about it? What can I do about it on a personal basis? Absolutely nothing. All we can do is get prepared for the inevitable. I'm not grandstanding here, right? I'm not trying to make a scene. I'm telling you the truth. And all you have to do is be honest with yourself, and you'll agree that our country is in default. It has defaulted on the American dream. There is no longer any time for people to have an American dream because they have taken it away. I mean, think about this. Even if, let's say you play the stock market and you go on there and you make $100,000. Right off the bat, before you can use that money, before you can take that money and use it, right off the bat, $25,000 goes to the government. And then on top of that, the other $75,000 that you have left, think about all the other taxes that you pay on it. Let's say you live in the state of California. I think their federal income tax or their state tax over there is like 13%. That's another 13%. That's another $13,000 that goes out the window. And then by the time that you're done paying for everything to live on that $67,000 or whatever it is that you have left, then you still have to pay taxes on gasoline. Then you still have to pay taxes for where you live. It's tax after tax after tax. Okay, going back, boomers make up the second largest generation in American history. It consists of 72 million individuals. Most have little in the way of savings. And let me show you why it is that things are not going to change. Things are not going to get better for the boomers as far as finances go. It's because we live in a democracy, ladies and gentlemen. That's why things aren't going to get better for the boomers. You know, the millennials, you know, the Generation X, the Generation Z. I'm Generation X. I think Generation X still has some empathy in their hearts and understanding of what the boomers are going through in order to vote for them to continue to receive their benefits that they paid into for the rest of their life. But what about these other two generations, millennials and Generation Z? Do you think they're educated enough? Do you think they know enough history in order to vote the way that Generation X would vote for the boomers? They outnumber us, ladies and gentlemen. And I would say that a lot of Generation X that are asleep will vote the way of the millennials and Generation Z. Now, I'm not trying to insult any millennials or Generation Z. I'm not trying to do that at all. But facts are facts. Go to a college campus and ask someone how many letters there are in the alphabet, and you will be surprised. Yes, I watch those videos every once in a while too. So when it comes time and the government says, hey, let's go ahead and vote to give these guys more money, but we can't pay your student loans off, right? We have to actually make you start paying rent again and take away the moratoriums on not paying rent. So we can do one or two. What are these guys going to do? What are they going to do? We'll forgive your student loans, or you can pay your student loans, and we'll go ahead and take care of the people that build this country. That's what democracy is. So what do you think is going to happen to the boomers going forward? And listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. This goes to what I just talked about. Adding to this problem is that the generations following the baby boomer generation are even worse off. And America's economic picture is less than rosy. I would say that it's way less than rosy. I don't think you should even classify it as rosy whatsoever. And this is where it comes down to saving real money instead of saving the fiat currency that you earned in fiat currency terms. Unfortunately, even most Americans that have saved over their lifetime and done the right thing are in peril. Considering the amount of debt already amassed, the government is going to have a difficult time putting together generous new aid packages to come to the aid of those dependent on its program, and that is where the vote is going to come in. That is where most of the people will vote for government to give them what they need, not what the country needs. Not knowing that what the country needs should take priority over what the people need, because what the country needs is to fix itself so that then everyone can be prosperous. But no one wants to go through the pain. Delayed gratification is an art form that expired a long time ago. We live in the now generation, where what you want now is what you want now. Those in or nearing retirement should make an extra effort to reduce risk and keep their savings safe. And next month, there will be an awakening of many, many people, ladies and gentlemen. We've talked about this before. 32 states are set to slash emergency food stamp benefits. More than 30 million Americans face a hunger cliff because they are going to be cut off, or their benefits or entitlements are going to be greatly reduced. And why is that, ladies and gentlemen? Why? Because they have now become dependent on a system that doesn't care about them. Take a look at this. I've talked about this before, but let's revisit it real quick. Before the health crisis, we were spending about $60 billion on SNAP entitlements, right? And during the health crisis and up to the month of February, I believe it's next month in March that they cut these things off, we were spending twice that much, just shy of $120 billion. So what happened in those couple of years that they were doing these extra benefits? People got hooked on this. People liked getting this money, and they got used to getting this money, and now they depend on getting this money. And listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, we should be doing really good, because despite having the lowest unemployment rate since 1969, more than 42 million Americans remain on food stamps, 6% more than in 2020, according to USDA data. How's that war on poverty working out now? Since the war on poverty began in the mid to late 1960s, I believe, the United States of America has spent over $30 trillion. Think about that. Over $30 trillion. What good has it done? The only thing that it's accomplished is exactly what the state wanted it to accomplish, is to create a class of citizens that are dependent on the government. This may be some hard truth for some people. But the reason that we are in the predicament that we are in now as a nation is because those hard truths were not taught enough. And as many Americans are going to go hungry, as many Americans go hungry now, as many Americans don't have a place to live, as many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, as 1/3 of the younger population lives with mom and dad, even though they're full-grown adults, as most of the younger population depends on mom and dad for something or another, be it rent, be it money for groceries, or money for utilities. After all that, ladies and gentlemen, the government still has money, $27 billion to spend on their Green New Deal, or their Green Dream. Is what it is, because it's just a dream. One day we will wake up from this nightmare called the Green New Deal, and we will understand that it was nothing but a boondoggle to steal from you and enrich in others. It's like the military-industrial complex, which in a way, it's that F word. You know that F word that ends in ism, where the government colludes with corporations in order to enrich in themselves by taking away from their citizens, the ones that they were actually elected to serve? It's the same thing. There's a lot of people getting rich from this, but it's definitely not you or the common working person. Definitely not. 2 more trains derail across U.S. after the Ohio catastrophe. The Ohio catastrophe, ladies and gentlemen, the video that I put out last night, I believe it was the last video I put out last night, that is being considered the most severe chemical disaster that we've had in the history of our nation. And I looked into it a little bit more, and it was all because of money, just like I said on that video. They wanted to clear up that rail so that they can get more trains going through it, because if not, it would have been a lot more expensive to do so. So instead of transferring those dangerous chemicals from one tanker to another, they went ahead and decided to do what they call a controlled burn, to the demise of the people, of the citizens that live around that area. And now look at what's happened. This is going to last years. The repercussions from them doing this is going to last years. And it is only the people that will suffer, because those people that can afford to move, they will move. But what about the ones that can't? I hope that you understand that the time to prepare is coming to an end. That there will come a day that if you're not prepared, you're going to have a very heavy burden on your back, especially if you have a family. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you're preparing. I hope that you are doing your research. I hope that you are looking at everything. I hope that when I put these articles on a pinned comment, that you're revisiting them. because in revisiting one or two of them, it might inspire you to look into other things more so than you would have in the past. Have a great day. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm an Ask a Prepper. I'm out.